You have 2 semester caps. So you have to actually build a business while you're with us.
Dang. And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today we have Carina Gardner. She is a business owner. She is a teacher. We will put our lock on our mouth and talk about some, but not everything. And we'll talk about why we can't talk about the things that we can or can't talk about with Carina when it comes to the education system in this country. So Carina, thank you very much for joining the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was funny as we're going into the preamble, we're like, okay, so we can talk about this maybe, but I'm not sure. And now we know that we can some.
Yeah,
kind of.
it's a pretty tricky space that I'm kind of walking into. So I have a doctor.
Well, let's talk about where you were before
Yes.
first. We can kind of give like some preamble to kind of understand that and kind of get a sense there.
Yeah. So I've been a designer now for 16 years. I've owned a design business. And about 3 years ago, I went from practitioner to educator, and which is ironic because I started in education because I taught at the University of Minnesota, and then started my own design business, ran a very successful, very lucrative design business for 16 years. And then 3 years ago, decided, so many people were asking, like, how are you doing it? How are you making multiple 6 figures? Because the average amount someone makes in the after you design school is about $55,000 after college. And so, I was making quadruple, 5 times that sometimes, so people were just kind of like, how are you doing that? And so I started talking about it and started this very random, very easy program where it was just like, I made some courses. I met with people once a week and I just started critiquing their stuff and saying, go put it in this shop, go put it in this shop, go do this. And started to realize I had all these philosophies around business based on my actual businesses, like what was going, what was working, what was making money. And so 3 years ago, I did that. And it has slowly and surely morphed as I have realized what people really need and how to get them there, which has been fascinating.
That is really cool. That is really cool. So when you got into and again, as you said, you started off in the teaching and then you went to the doing. What were you teaching before you got at the University of Minnesota?
So my biggest thing, I was well known for typography. I taught the undergrads typography and then packaging design, which is so interesting because I'm a silhouette designer now. That's a die cutting machine. So like a Cricut or a silhouette machine. I'm a silhouette designer. So I taught packaging. Now I do packaging and teach people how to make all these crazy like 3D monstrous projects and like really cool, amazing stuff. So, but it's mostly in the crafting space, which is interesting. And it really led me to realize that in the academic space, we have these ideas of what we need to do for design, but we don't actually know marketplaces because we don't sell in marketplaces. And so when I started selling in marketplaces, I was like, oh, there's like crafting marketplaces and there's fabric marketplaces. And there's all these like little nuances to getting into different marketplaces to sell your work.
Yeah, when it comes to the crafting space, my mom is into that. What is it called? Scrapbooking is what she does. And then my wife's mom.
What is that? That thing, scrapbooking. I was the creative director for a scrapbooking company, so she probably bought my scrapbook.
Oh,
yeah, there was a time
she bought it all, so
yeah.
it just said scrapbooking. The only answer was yes.
Yes.
And she loves it. And she does a great job. It really makes some amazing gifts.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Yeah, and that is such an interesting space. And it's a diminishing space at the moment because so many people have gone digital with everything they've done. So these marketplaces fluctuate. And that's the way regular business is though, right? You're paying attention to the way they fluctuate. So what we're finding is there are a lot of online classes out there that teach you one specific thing, like how to make scrapbooking paper or how to make surface pattern design for fabric. And we find that is maybe the worst way to learn how to design. I still think that the university way to learn how to design is actually still an appropriate method because you understand overarching design so that you can go into marketplaces. The piece that's missing in the university is the business piece, like how to actually run a business, how to actually get out there, even resume building. We don't really do a ton of that in the university arena.
So when you're teaching the design, you're really focusing on what maybe we do in the business space is focus on principles work at the principles, and then get to mechanics.
Exactly.
And whether that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whether that's business or whether that's design, I think that's a good hierarchy to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I really think that that foundational bit is so important. And it's the piece we're seeing most people are missing. They don't know how to talk in design language, right? When we talk about business and we start talking about P&Ls and, you know, what we're doing in the digital marketing space, and we're talking about a funnel, you know, if you've never been introduced to that, you're going to be a little confused. I remember when I was confused, when I was like, what is a freaking funnel? What are these people talking about? Right. Same thing happens in the design space, right? When I start talking about negative space and how we're using it and focal points and dynamic movement and the placement on a page, and people are like, okay, I kind of get it, but they don't know how to execute it. Some of those things, that's what we need in a foundational design. And then,
well, when you use those words are, I mean, in real estate, when you're staging a home, I mean, negative space, that resonates with me. I mean, when you're looking at decluttering and keeping things simple and adjacent colors or palettes and all of these things, that could be used in staging, that could be used in scrapbooking, that could be used in any of those. So those would be universal, I would think.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Well, and especially, I was going to tell you, at the University of Minnesota, I taught the undergraduate foundations honor students in our basic foundations class. That actually included graphic designers, interior designers, clothing designers, architecture, and our housing folks. So I had students from every single realm in the department taking the same foundations course, because a lot of the vocabulary really is the same. It's just being used practically in different ways.
And what would be, say, some top high level foundations in a design? Like, if you're going to say maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that somebody needs to focus on when they're looking at designing.
I'm like looking over at my whiteboard because I just taught a lesson to my designers on this. This is like understanding dynamic movement is probably the biggest. Dynamic versus static, so that you can really, it's about changing the design into a dynamic. Very often you don't want static. Once in a while you do, but you know, usually not. I think the Gestalt principles, these are like really basic principles around design, like closure. So like if you don't close up something, your eye still can confirm what that thing is. That's how we can see, like, you know, we can see a chair and it's missing a leg, but we still assume the identity of a chair. There's some like brain things that are happening, right, to close up and build identity. So Gestalt principles, I think, are pretty important. I'm like looking over my similarity and contrast, like some basic like how do we use similarity? Like IKEA does this probably the best. Similarity to bring expansive things to make them leveled up, right? So you get like a $1.99 planter, but they put 10 of them out there in a row and suddenly it's sophisticated, right?
Yep.
And so the way we use similarity and contrast can really change the way we look at a design. I gave you 3. Is that good? Gestalt principles.
Yeah. That's a very good 3. I like that. I like that a lot. And I think about that when, again, real estate, I love real estate and staging. I think that's a really important thing to keep as a principle when looking at that. So I think that's pretty universal. That's awesome. I like that. Now, when you went from the design and you went into the teaching, and you're teaching principles of design, and you keep on resonating around the topic of business. Talk to me how you started to realize that people who are solopreneurs, trade-focused mindsets really lack the awareness around business.
Yeah. I mean, so we go to school and we go learn something, right? Some kind of white collar trade or vocational trade, possibly, right? But then no one teaches you to open up QuickBooks and keep all your receipts in one place. No one tells you that if you are designing a bunch of stuff and you just like hope sales will happen, that if you don't add an add to cart button to it, then sales are not going to happen. You know, like there's some really basic things here, but people like hope and dream that their Instagram feed is going to be discovered. I think this is a very interesting thing. We see this all the time. People who have Instagram feeds full of their designs, they have a link at the top says, here's my email to contact for freelance or for what. I'm just like, this is luck. You are hoping for luck to happen in your life. This is not running a business, because true running business is distribution, understanding distribution, and then also having an exit strategy for distribution. And this is a lesson that was a hard one for me to learn, as well as I've owned multiple businesses. But if you have a good distribution strategy and you have a foolproof for getting out when it fails, because guess what? It's somewhere in the middle of it, something's not going to work. Something's going to go wrong. If you do not have a way to pivot, you are in trouble.
Yeah, it's 100%. And I think when people fall in love with what they're doing, they really hone in on that craft. And I guess they assume that everybody else is going to follow suit and fall in love with what they fell in love with. And once they realize that that's not necessarily true, because, the 5 people looked at your Instagram post, which is your aunt, and maybe you clicking the like button, and maybe your alter persona clicking the like button, and that's everybody who looked at it. And they realize, oh, what do I do next? Yeah. And so talk to me about that.
I just think that if you have never run a business before, you think that your business is the greatest idea and it's one that everybody needs, and you just are going to put it out there to try to win. And the moment you realize that no one is going to buy because you've done all the wrong distribution strategies, and there really are good, solid strategies out there for business for distributing your product. It is fascinating to me because people don't understand that. And it's really basic. In the art world, there's 4 ways: galleries, which are really hard to get into; commissions, which is, you can commission through licensing with a manufacturer, or maybe you get a commission deal with a book, to do the artwork from it, right? Freelance work. Third is fairs. So art fairs, craft fairs, shows, any kind of wholesale show. That's the third one. And the fourth one is online platforms, which is by far the easiest to get into and the one we like to teach the best, because man, oh man, you can start making money in 6 weeks or less, right? But it's people are always looking for the sexiest thing. And they're like, I want a fabric manufacturer, or I want to be in a gallery. My good friends who are in galleries, it took them 12 years to get into galleries. And so it's just thinking about pie in the sky. If we're really thinking about money, we'll choose the easiest way to get there. But I find that especially artists and creatives don't do it. I see this in business though too. Things seem sexier doing it this way instead of just doing it the hard, grindy way, which actually makes you money.
I just spoke with the guy today where we were doing a breakthrough for his business, and it was exactly the same way. He was like, okay, he wanted to focus on this landing page. He wanted to focus on his website. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, great. We've made all these roads. Now let's talk about the most important thing: traffic. And if we don't talk about the traffic, those roads don't matter. You could build the sexiest roads on a planet. So beautiful. But guess what? If nobody's there, it's a ghost town. And we know cobwebs grow in the ghost town, and that's what you don't want.
I wonder why it is. You maybe have a better answer than I do on this, but why are they so scared of trying to get leads in? Because it just feels like too hard? They can't figure out how to make it happen? What's the deal?
I think it's exactly what you said. A lot of people are afraid of doing hard things, or what they might conceive as hard things. And I think their motivation, because they see other people, they might be seduced by these online influencers that are saying, we can get you, so many leads in so many minutes. And then they want to bypass the cost, and they just want the results. Mm-hmm. So they're disconnecting the results and the cost to get to those results. And you're either going to pay in time or you're going to pay in money. You're going to pay either. Typically you pay in both. And
always,
because the time,
I feel like you pay in both.
So you got to do the hard things. We have this happen in I'm in the mixed martial arts space, and I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and we have people who, they're like, you listen to them talking like, I'm the greatest fighter. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. How much training? Oh, I just go red. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You just go red. Okay. How about the guy who's trained for 20 years, who's fought thousands of times, who's learned from the best? That's the person who's going to be more successful than the person who just goes red, because they have a strategy, of a system, and they have massive amount of implementation. Because I think, to me, massive action always beats perfect planning. And I think most people get stuck in the perfect planning moment, and then they forget the execution part.
Yeah.
And I think there was a slogan. It was most people fall in love with the plan, but they dread the execution of it. And the magic is in the work that you're avoiding doing.
Yeah.
And I think that to me speaks to solving that problem.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I actually think so there's this amazing, fantastic quiz that we make everyone on our team take. We've actually had our design students take this too. It's have you heard of it? It's the predictable success quiz.
Interesting. No, I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So they have 4 types of people on it: an operator, a visionary, a processor, and a synergist. And we make everyone take this because it helps us understand them better. And what we find is that people who are operators, they're doers. They like the to-do list. They'll just get things done. Most entrepreneurs are visionaries, which make a lot of sense because they have an idea for the plan. They get really excited about the overall vision. How good coaches are visionaries, right? Like there's like some really great things there. Processes are like the people who like love your taxes and they like the order of things. They're your system builders. And then synergists are relationship people who are like, especially sales people tend to be synergists. They like that sales piece. So I went to go take this test thinking, I have no idea who I am, what I do. And I was exactly equal parts operator visionary. And what I find is that if we can get more operators doing stuff, that's when things actually happen. When we have a whole bunch of visionaries, we have a lot of problems.
I totally agree with you. I mean, we use a process called DISC, which sounds very similar. And the idea is you have to get the person who's ready to execute. You know, a lot of people, when they sit around like, what do you want to get for dinner? I don't know. And then one person's like, we're going here. And whether it works out or not, you know, if the food shows up cold, at least somebody made a decision. We're moving forward. Yeah. And as long as you make more good decisions than bad ones, generally you're in a better situation, is how those people think. But you have to balance those with people who are very high detailed. We're going to say, well, hold on a second. I just looked at the reviews. That was a great idea, but I looked at reviews and it's a 1 star. Like, oh, okay, well then let's go here. Yeah. And then you put those people together. And I think the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. My personal belief is if you surround yourself with enough people that are different than you, that make up for the deficiencies that you have in your business, in your life, you're going to produce a way better result.
Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. I think it really does help. It is hard not to hire your same person, right? Because you're drawn to those people. It's very, very hard. But if you can find the different people, it really is better.
Yeah, I totally think surrounding yourself with people that will challenge you, not in the way that they're gonna just with conjecture, but challenge you with you're both looking for an outcome and hopefully a good outcome, a mutually good outcome. And I think that's extremely important as well is looking for conflict, but productive conflict in your business.
Yeah. I think too much conflict, though, at the beginning of your business, I'm going to say is very difficult and not a good thing. Because a lot of times at the beginning, what you're wanting to do is just secure a whole bunch of actions. Because if you don't secure a whole bunch of actions, you don't know which ones are the right ones. So anyone who is holding back, like what we talked about already, I would say like less conflict at the beginning is better just because you just need to go like as fast and as hard as you can.
Yeah, your conflict's going to be found through action. Yeah. So your conflict's not going to be found in planning. If your conflict, you're sitting there in planning and you're just arguing about getting something done, just start something, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And then the truth is going to present itself. The conflict happens through doing. It's like when you teach, again, I love martial arts as a great reference, is that if you learn something like an arm bar, but you never test it in live rolling, you never truly know if it actually works. So just get out there and test it and make sure that it works. And if it doesn't work, fix it. Either that or just say, that was a ruse. It's not real.
Yeah.
So now you've gone from that and now let's go into the juicy stuff. You've got the education side in the background, then you had the operating business, then you started doing the training and now you're deciding to get to the point of going on to into the university space and playing in that game. Talk to me about that.
That is it's the craziest thing I thought the craziest thing was getting into the educational online space. This is the craziest thing. Okay. So I've been thinking about this for well over a year before even executing it, which is not like me I usually am like the fastest executor you've ever met. You know, in the first 3 years of this business, this educational business, we hit multi-million very, very quickly. We built the team up to 17 people. Like, I will try anything and everything to get us to where we need to go because of impact, right? Like for me, like I saw what we were doing and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than what I was teaching at a university, because I'm not limited to what I can't just teach packaging here. Like I can teach you like packaging and tell you how to sell the packaging. Like, what? This is awesome. Right? Because I can sell it and teach it any way I want. And what I found is my students just responded to that. And we call them members. They're not students. They're members of our program. And we figured out, like, it took them a whole year to get here. We found out that 18 months was like the marking point where people really started making money. It's like we have all this data on how people do, the money they're making, the case studies of how they're doing it. So it's really phenomenal, right? Except for I start to realize there's some holes. There's just a few holes. The biggest hole for me is this. I have 3 kids, but my 2 oldest one's working on an associate's degree right now, and one is in high school and she's got 1 more year. And I started thinking about how if there was a program like mine out there for the degrees they want to be in, I would pay big money to put them in it, because that's how good I know my program is, like how far it pushes people. They get 1 year instead of 4 years and they can rock it out. Okay. So I started thinking about that. And then I started thinking about how the moment I feel like I'm done with this, and I'm not going to do this forever. I'm not going to teach forever. Right. Then it's gone. And so you start thinking about legacy and you start thinking about impact. And then the other thing we were running into is we don't really have anyone in our space like us, but there are these like pseudo little tiny classes out there for like $2,000 and $700 teaching all these like little things to do. And it just feels like the wild west of, like, we're technically in this space. And I'm like, don't compare me to that. Don't compare me to that, because these are all people who are teaching design who literally don't know much about business. They say they teach business. There's even like a class out there is like, it calls like the art of business. And like, they do not teach a single piece of business. I know for a fact they don't know how to run anything but their own online business, which is, guys, that's different than being a designer and running a design business. So it's sort of this disappointing thing. And then I was like, so now what do I do? How do we differentiate, right? Because the best thing you can do is differentiate in the marketplace. And I was like, so to differentiate myself from the online space, we decided to create a private university, which now puts me in league with the universities and puts us at this level, not this level. That's a really tough place to be, because I still want to teach vocational. I want to teach design where you run a business at the end. And so it was a tough decision to make, because it put us in a different space, but I'm quite nervous. And I'm going to tell you, we're going through the process right now. I'm very nervous that they are going to make it so that I can't teach it the way I really want to teach it. I'm going to fight really hard to do it exactly the way I know it needs to be done. But I'm not going to lie. It's a scary process.
Well, let's deconstruct this a little bit, because there's a lot that we just covered in that last little bit. First of all, you're already teaching. And whether you call it members, students, or whatever, you already had courses, and, of some particular amount, in the courses and coaching space, people are talking about my high ticket course and, that sort of thing. And university really is just a high ticket course that comes with, a lot of stuff around it. There's been a movement in the education space and a polarity around just schooling in general. I mean, I know, at our school for my kids just the other day, we got this, like, my son came in, he goes, Dad, click on this link. And so I clicked on this link, and they gave him a 78 questionnaire that asked him about, all these personal questions that I didn't think it was right for them to ask my child these personal questions without my consent. And I'm talking very personal things. And so with that being the mechanism of the schooling system, with the universities going through a lot of the troubles that they're going through right now, a lot of people are looking at that going, do I want to go that direction with their kids Do I want to go that direction at all? Even, the homeschooling is just gone off the rails. The independent schooling has gone, just crazy. And as everybody's running this way, you're actually running this way.
I know.
And so I'm like, why?
Because I think I'm Coco Chanel. And when Coco Chanel, literally when Dior was coming in with his back to tight and skinny corsets, she was like, oh no, we're going this way. It's going to be baggy and it's going to be boyish. And I don't really think I'm Coco Chanel, but I really think what I am is I actually think it's an indication of market. When you see everybody going one way, you actually should be going the opposite way. Because one of the problems is, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna give you a girly example. I remember when these dresses, they're like really big, puffy, whatever dresses. They're really comfortable and light, and they have multiple layers of cut fabrics on it. I remember when they hit Anthropologie. And then I remember when they hit Target, like only 6 months later. That's almost when you know it's done. Like the trend is done. Okay. It hit Target. We're done. Okay. It's going to still sit out there.
You lost me at Anthropologie.
Okay.
So.
Well, when something is out there and trending, right? It's kind of like coaching. Like people started getting into the coaching space over pandemic because there needed to be it. And so people got really excited. People spent a lot of money. And so now it's so funny. People are looking back even 2 or 3 years and they're like, I should get into coaching because all these people are making money and they're all now coaching businesses and all this other stuff. And so there's all these coaches rising up. Yeah, that's the wrong place. I'm not going to be in that space because you can tell that's how it gets oversaturated. That's how you don't differentiate. The moment you start doing everything everybody else does, that's when you've lost all your flair and all of your real ability to make money.
Yeah, I think what is it? What does they say? When there's blood in the water, there's time to make money. And, and when everybody's making the decision, it's time to get out, and it's, that's a real estateism.
Yeah.
And I think, that definitely you can find that in certain businesses.
Yeah.
Unless it's like you're in the VHS space and you're selling, rental tapes, Be Kind, Rewind.
Yeah.
And if everybody's getting out, guess what? I think it's probably time to leave.
Okay. So maybe not VHS, but look at the record and vinyl come back though. So you have to be really careful because you don't know what's going to come back. You cannot play the predictor, on those things. So you do have to pay attention. I will tell you one of the other reasons we got into this, and it's very fascinating, is we found that people still, even if we know that the cost for higher education feels too high, there is still a lot of value in the degree itself. It's fascinating because I have a doctorate. I finished my doctorate when I was only 27, and people still regard that, even though in my mind, it was me jumping a whole bunch of hurdles. I don't think I'm smarter than anybody else. It's like I paid for the schooling. I went, I did it. But people still regard that with a certain amount of respect, which is fascinating. And so what we found when we kind of surveyed our people and kind of figured out, here are the things we're going to do. Where does this put you? People still put a lot on that degree. And we actually ended up deciding to break it down further. So we kept our design suite program, which is our main, we know we can do whatever the heck we want. We call it our accelerated program so people can get through it in a year. And then we built a certificate program. And the reason we did this is because we didn't want to do general eds. And I'm not saying that one day we wouldn't do general eds, but we were planning on doing an associate's degree. But the moment I figured out the red tape on that, I was like, you know what? We're not bringing in faculty for that. I'm not doing that. Instead, I would rather give a design certificate that's vocational that people actually can use right now. And it aligns with our master's degree, which we're offering a master's degree in art and design business. And so when we figured out those were the 3 things that would serve our people the best, it made a ton of sense.
It's interesting that when you look at a master's degree in art, design, and business.
Yeah.
And I think that right there is a really interesting program. And you talked about getting slack on and getting fight back on what you want to do. Where does the fight back exist?
Right now, it's mostly in, I hate to say this, but credit hours. Okay. Like in credit hours, because in a master's degree program, we need to do 36 credit hours, and there's a certain amount of rigor we have to put into it to qualify as a master's degree. But you and I know that maybe if they only took 2 semesters of my coursework, that was all like capstone, actually doing the business, getting it done, we could do it faster.
100%. Yeah. There's a governing body in real estate that issues these courses. And what they do is they have it's an online course that you have to take to keep up with your licensing. And they make the speaker talk at a very slow pace, and you can't fast forward it. And it shows everything on the screen. So you can read it. So you're done reading it about 15 seconds, but you can't fast forward it. But you know they're doing it so they can meet the curriculum limit
Credit
of
hours.
the time, the credit hours.
Like
that makes sense now.
It is such a fascinating thing, because here's the thing. When we edit our videos, we actually edit them so that they're slick. So it's like you cut off the front part, we cut off any stumbles, and I'm kind of like, wait, are we going to have to like leave that all in for hours of lecture time? I'm like, no, that's not the way I work. So literally, I'm just like, I'm going to continue to be efficient, because that is the way I do things. And because I'm trying to, okay, so here's my feeling about university. While I know everyone, like not everyone, but I would say 50% of the country is running from university, I'm going to say this. If we can do a better job in the universities, it could be a not broken system. That's what I'm going to say. I think that there is still time to fix it. And this is my contribution: to start a private university that is outcomes based, not just teaching you randomly so that you can get the certificate. If we're outcomes based, then I think if people see what we're doing, my hope is that there is a tenure, like there's an overall feeling of change. And so one little seed, that's what all I am. I'm a tiny little seed in this huge forest, but I'm going to try to do my part in this.
When you look at the university foundations and the principles around teaching or lecturing versus, because it's lecturing, it's not teaching. And that's a secondary task for them, probably even tertiary. What they're really doing is they raise money and they do research. And that's their principal focus for most universities. Am I correct?
That is right. And here's the thing. It's not the actual individual professor's fault, because their tenures are all on how many papers they've written, how much research they've done. So when I first started my master's degree program, I was a teaching assistant, and a research assistant, not a teaching assistant, a research assistant. So one of my goals was to gather data, pull papers together, start writing the process for my professor, and then they would write the final paper. And, I was the one getting all the data for them. So here's the thing. If you can hire research assistants to do this, and this is a main part of what you're doing, then how is it possible for you to spend all your time creating amazing lectures and figuring out what the students need the very best? Like, it's almost impossible. And I can tell you that as someone who is the CEO of my company and running now 3 programs and dealing with a lot of red tape. It's almost impossible. It's so hard.
So how do you break that?
For me, I hire more people, right? For a professor, impossible, right?
But that's the system you're going in.
That is the system I'm going in, but I've made some choices. So the bureaus and people we are currently working with have less, I want to say less rigor. It's like a better system for the way we want to do things. And I spent a solid probably 3 months researching all the different bureaus, who it was going to be the best to work with, so we could still deal with Department of Education. Like we still wanted all of those things. There's some really wonderful things that you can get. But I found the one that was going to actually allow me to teach outcomes. And that was really what I was looking for. So
you're really going to be an education-based university rather than a research-based university.
Yeah, no research at all.
That's amazing. And for somebody who's actually looking to learn, especially in that art space, and especially because you're integrating business, that sounds like your vision, your lens is going to align with the student's lens of that they want to come out with ability to create their vision in the world.
Yeah.
And the only way they can do that is by being underpinned by good education. And that comes from somebody whose vision's aligned with their vision.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds like a better system.
I think it is. I think it's like vocational white collar. So like, for example, most master's degree programs, you write a huge thesis paper at the end. Ours is not. You have to have a working portfolio that is actually selling things in the marketplace. You have 2 semester caps. So you have to actually build a business while you're with us.
Dang.
Yeah, it's really not it's way harder than the thesis paper, way harder, and will actually make you leave our master's degree program with an actual business.
Now, you didn't tell me that to now, so I had that some shock look on my face when you told me that. That is poetry to me.
Yeah.
That is poetry. And I think that's what should happen in any, especially when it's vocationally tied. I know a lot of the engineering style, like the STEM, really hone in on that. One of my good friends, he went back to college and university for engineering, and it's just like what he's doing in robotics, the things that he's building. It's so cool. I mean, he's not hitting the business side, but he's actually getting into actually doing things. Mm-hmm. And I think getting people into action is so critical, like what we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah. And getting into action. Get credit for that, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you spend time inventing a new X, Y, and Z, a new AI software, in the business world, you get credit for that. Why aren't we getting credit for that in the education space?
Absolutely. You know, when I was in university long ago, I'm 50 now, so it's funny to be judged by something you've done 30 years ago, whatever. But I didn't graduate university. I did 2 years. The second year, after the first year, I did AAA student painters, which I ran a business. So in a business school, I was like, I'm going to start a business in the summer, but it didn't work out. I had some issues and stuff, and I ended up having to leave university for numerous reasons. You know, both financially, but also I made some bad choices. I was young.
Well, you were young. That's what happened.
I was young. But the idea is if and I didn't find school interesting. I didn't find business interesting. We sat in a computer science class where we're learning about things that were 30 years old that have nothing to do with the computers that we're using that day. I'm like, this is useless.
Yep.
And so the idea that you could find business, and connect that to something that you're doing right now, that is super interesting. So yeah. I love that as a program.
Here's the thing. We kind of call ourselves right now, like I'm seeing MBA programs, and they give you like an overbroad view of what this case studies about business. And I find that not very helpful. I find that great business is in the particulars. So for example, if I'm in real estate as well. So if I'm in real estate and I take a course that tells me you need this with a banker and you need to have this amount of money down, and it's the details that allow me to go into that business and make sound decisions. It's not the overarching case study of someone who did X over there that's going to help me get where I need to go. So that's why we feel this very strongly about design in particular, because that's what I know, and art, fine artists in particular, because if we can take those things and micromanage it down to be like, okay, now if you're on an online platform, these are the algorithms you're looking for. These are the SEO things you should be looking for. These are the things that will actually push your product out. Have you done the research? Are you looking at your own spreadsheets of your products to see what's doing the best? It's like that kind of stuff. No one ever taught me that. That's just good business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you get somebody into action, they see things that they wouldn't see when they sit there planning.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing in your course. And I think that's brilliant. I think when it comes to any person who wants to be entrepreneurial, having that mindset of getting into action, especially in I hate using the word, a safe space of education, I think it's really interesting to see that. And I think that would keep people more engaged into the program, because it just has so much more energy to doing something rather than sitting there laboring over something that has no connection to the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, agreed. And our hope is actually that our certificate program is viewed with as much like love and respect as our master's degree program, because they are very similar. The rigor is a little bit different, but like the fact that I had someone got on a call to me and said, like, she was like, what do I have to have? And I was like, a GRE, a high school diploma. Like, I was just like, I don't care. Like, guess what? You're not going to use math, algebra the way that you think you're going to use it. You're definitely not going to use it in design that way. You're not going to use geology. You're not going to use biology. Those are great things. And I like the idea of an overarching education. I think it's a lovely thing. But in this day and age, we need specialists. There are
Absolutely.
like, we live in a world where we need specialists. We need specialists who write books or write papers or copyright, right? Like, we need people who are specialists. And so we're specialists. So I'd rather build a certificate program that actually built specialists, people who could actually pivot around in the design field. They can get a job in-house, they can freelance, build that business, or build an online platform business, and feel very comfortable in that space and doing what they need to do.
Well, I think if you're feeding people's addictions, because everybody has something that they're addicted to, right? You might be addicted to popcorn. You might be addicted to movies. You might be addicted to working out. And the idea is, when somebody goes through the education system and they get their first degree, and then they get their second degree, and then they get so in love with the planning phase. And when you get into business, you have to get out of that phase as fast as possible. And so the idea that you're integrating the action phase, and so that they start falling in love and getting addicted to the action phase, I think that's a really interesting model for learning.
Yeah. Well, you should see semester 2, because literally the business for designers class, it is, you write your business plan. And it is practical. Like, we don't mess around. Like, you're not writing flowery language. We don't want any of that. It is literally like, so you start building it.
No floral pattern language?
Which is ironic, because we do draw an awful lot of floral patterns, myself included. But it's more like, this is the shop I'm going to work in. This is the number of products I'm going to put up. Here's how I'm going to build it. It is so action oriented. And a lot of that just has to do with the way I built my businesses, right? And I saw what failed and what worked. So if we can get people on a trajectory where they can really learn to build a profitable business, I don't see how we're not winning in that space, right?
I don't think so. And I think you're in a situation where I agree with you, is once you've kind of crafted that design of what you're looking at doing, the idea that everybody's running this way, but you're running back this way, but you're kind of sitting in both camps by the way that you put it out, because you really are just a high ticket course, like everybody goes online and buys, except comes with a university degree. And I think you're kind of winning in all angles, really.
I fingers crossed that was like where we hoped to be, right? And I think if you're uniquely qualified, right? Like, so you understand martial arts, right? Mm-hmm. I don't understand it. I'm not going to go teach martial arts, right? So it's like, what's the thing I understood? Well, I taught at a university. I got a doctorate. I understood what the hurdles were. I was uniquely qualified to build a degree program. And then I owned a design business for 16 years. So it's like, whatever you're uniquely qualified to do, that's the thing you ought to build. And this just so happened to be what I knew how to build.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, we can't talk about the name because you've got to obviously work on that. And I know.
Let me tell about the process, though, because you guys, this is why people do not build private universities. I have figured it out. It's a 4-year process, by the way. I've only owned my program for 3 years, and I already know what my next 4 years are going to look like. It's insane. Okay. The next 6 months, all we are doing is building out all of this information about the credit hours, how it's being used, how we're laying it out, our end goals and objectives. Now, of course, I know our end goals and objectives because we've been doing it for 3 years, but now we've got to lay it out university style in policy and all of that. Okay. Then the second thing is, I didn't know this. I went on yesterday to go look it up, but did you know you cannot buy a .edu? I had no idea. It is owned by the government. So you guys, if you are looking for really institutions that are actually licensed, it's a .edu. Maybe I could be wrong about this, but I went looking into it yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, we can't get our name until the government actually issues our name, right? So it's a 6-month period just to get the license for the actual name. There are rules around names. And so we have a name and we've submitted it. And we are now just in licensing nowhere land right now. So, but here's the ironic thing. Let me tell you guys, this is so crazy. I start our first pilot program for the certificate program May 20th. So we have to run pilot programs for the next 2 years like, I will get the name, I'm hoping, by 2025. But it's like, we have to still start. I haven't figured out how anybody else is doing this, because I'm like, the only reason I can do it is because I have this other amazing program that supports us doing this other thing. But we're starting already. Like, the curriculum is already set. We've already built it. We now are just going through like kind of all the written stages of it to make sure it works. But we're talking about like 6 months for policy, 12 months for our initial review, another 12 months for another review. And then we start working on, I can't even say what else, but there's like the next step is the very last step of it. So
Yeah, there was a place in Canada that did, I think, for paramedics, where they ran a course for certifying paramedics. And their whole thing was to compress, because they felt that the paramedic program was way too long and they could get it done in a shorter period of time, because the way that they ran it was like your classes were every 3 days and for like 1 hour a day. And they're like, well, why don't we just do it 5 days in a row, 8 hours a day? And then we could just teach it faster.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. And so they got it running. And I think they had the same sort of program like what you're talking about, because all the paramedics got through really quickly. And I think some of the other schools got wind of that or something. And then they got shut down, and they were going to decertify every one of those paramedics.
I don't have that problem. That doesn't exist like in this space, because you just run pilots, you know? So,
well, they had to pass an exam, and they all passed the exam. So they all passed the exam. So it's like, what does it matter what they did before? They all passed the exam. It's a universal exam.
Very
I thought it was really
fascinating.
interesting just about the education space.
Yeah. And it is, there are people who are holding on. They want ownership, right? They're holding on. I'm not afraid of the space, because I've been in the space for a little while, so I understand how it works. And it's just like anything else. So if you get the right people together, you will get stuff done, right? You see this in politics. You see this in like any lobbyist groups.
Maybe not in politics.
Maybe not in politics. But you know, when I went to write my doctoral dissertation, right, I hand selected my entire committee. I had to have design people on that committee. I had to have someone outside of that committee, and I so happened to have a fabulous committee chair for my committee. And I looked at her. Her name was Barbara Martinson. I looked at her and I said, listen, Barbara, I want to get this done fast. I was also pregnant with my second child. Okay. So I said, I'm going to do this the fastest. I mean, I was 27 when I finished. So like, I like doing things fast. So I was like, I'm going to do this the fastest possible. Who do I have on the committee who will let me go as fast as I want to go? Cause I was still going to write a 300-page dissertation. It might have been bigger than that. I have it in my office somewhere, but you know, it's like, it's as long as you're doing the work, you know, it's like, she was like, okay, it was like strategic. Like we sat down, we're like, we want this person and we want this person, and this person will understand the stats, you know, because I ran a bunch of research stats. I was like, this person will understand the t-test that we need to run this. So you gather your people together and you build it right. We've done the exact same thing to start this university. We hired an amazing consultant that literally everybody at this conference I went to raved about, and had got them through really quickly. I was like, she's our girl. I don't even care how much she costs. Like, she's our girl, right? So it's like, you put together the right team. You can't fail unless you're willing to just give up in the middle of the process, which I'm not saying that we wouldn't give up. If we see that it won't create the outcomes and it will not serve our students, we will not do it. That's period.
That makes no sense. You're a purist to the goal and your mission, which is the best way to be, for sure. For sure.
Well, I mean, it's about impact, right? Like if I can make this little change here, and we can show also that we're profitable, and we can show that we actually are changing the way that students are thinking about education. And here's the thing, we just released this last week. We already have something like 10 or 20 people signed up for the master's degree program for January of next year. Like, people are so excited about it. And that's how you know, like, status still apparently matters, right? That they're like still so many people who are like, yes. We also have several people signed up already for our May 20th design certificate. And I released this last Thursday. Today's Thursday. It's been 1 week. It has been a 1 week. And we've just and we haven't told anyone on social media. We haven't sent out a huge email to our list. We have just told like a few people, like, this is what we're on our way doing, about 2,000 out of our huge mailing list. And we already have people being like, I want that. I want to be a part of that. Right.
Well, I think the product speaks for itself in the way that you're, again, outcome focused. I think that right there, people don't want training. It's like, I think if you talk about the labor, nobody would ever want a baby.
Yeah.
Right? Talk about the baby. And then I think you're going to have people looking, and that's exactly what they're looking for, is they're looking for that outcome.
Yeah. Agreed. It's a little bit like, we always laugh because I always say it's like dangling the chocolate carrot. Like we give them a little bit of chocolate. Like this is going to be fun. And we
I don't know if you mean like a chocolate covered carrot?
Chocolate covered carrot. Have you never heard that before? It's the
I've seen those chocolate carrots, but not like a chocolate covered carrot.
No, it's a chocolate covered carrot. So it's like you really want to give them the vegetable. You want to give them the minerals, the vitamins, and all the good stuff. But the only way to get them there is for them to see the chocolate.
I'm going to dip a carrot in chocolate and see how that goes.
Tell me
now.
how that
I'm so curious.
Maybe a chocolate dipped.
I have a son that this is a thing that
broccoli.
could work.
I'm like trying to think what other
chocolate covered zucchini, like anything that's dippable, really. I don't know about chocolate covered broccoli. We could try that.
That sounds horrible.
It sounds terrible, but I still want to try it. Where's my fondue thing? I got to find it.
Oh, so good.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and we could talk for hours and hours and hours about the idea of the education system, the tenure system, and all the stuff that goes along with the administration of that and everything. And I think that's a whole nother podcast just to hit on. But I love the idea of what you're doing, and I love the direction that you're going, and that you're challenging the norms. And I think that's something that definitely needs to happen in that system. And I really look forward to seeing the outcome that you're going to bring and the change you're going to make.
No, I appreciate it so much. It's challenging the norms within the system, which is kind of the toughest place to do it.
Oh, and that, especially in something that has that much tenure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch for sure. Now, for people to reach you, the best spot right now, because obviously we can't look up the university at this point, the best thing is to find you on your website, which is the CarinaGardner.com website. And that's Gardner without an E.
Yeah.
.com. Yeah, it'll be in the show notes.
CarinaGardner.com. And if you're interested in the pilot programs, I will tell you this, they are highly discounted. So that's the thing about programs people don't realize. Especially if you really believe in the founder and what they're teaching and stuff, we have always had highly discounted whenever we started a program. And then about a year or two in, people are like, oh, I wish I had done that, because it's at regular price. And we're like, so pilot programs will be going up on our website in the next couple of weeks, because we already have several people signed up for the next one, but we're going to cap it. So if you're interested in it, you can just go to CarinaGardner.com. You'll see what we're up to.
Design, business, success. That's a great course. Yeah. And guys, this is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.